When Minnesota voters head to the polls in November, they will have two different constitutional amendments to vote on. One of those is the so-called marriage amendment. We have the Senate author of that amendment, Senator Warren Limmer, here to talk a little bit about it and why you believe Minnesotans should vote in favor of this. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm always glad to be here.
Always happy to have you. So again, chance for you to talk about this marriage amendment and the specific language.
A lot of people don't know why we're here. Why do we have this question before the public? And I think that's important to realize. A few years ago, there was a couple who wanted to be married in Hennepin County. They were a gay couple, and they were denied due to the Minnesota state law recognizing marriages only between one man and one woman. They immediately challenged the rule. That case is before the appellate court in the state of Minnesota. A number of other states have gone through this very same dance, and the courts have ended up defining marriage. And that's really not the role of the courts. They should be not writing law, they should be only interpreting law. And as a result, we thought in the legislature that it's time now that the public should be involved in defining marriage with their value system, not relying on a small group of politicians down in St. Paul, or even a smaller group of individuals, the judges, defining marriage from the bench. That's why the bill is now before the people of Minnesota this coming November.
Why do you think voters should vote yes on this amendment?
Well, first, it defines marriage as one man, one woman. It's the traditional definition that's lasted the test of time for thousands of years. Gay relationships, especially pushing into the marriage definition, is something that's more of a contemporary issue. Every time other societies have gone down the role of recognizing gay homosexual relationships, it seems like that society doesn't last long. That's a historical fact. But at the same time, when we look at the reason why anyone gets married, certainly you have the love interest, you have the relational bond, but it's also for propagation of the population. It brings order to that, and I believe that every scientific study has shown that the best relationship for a child to be raised in is one that you have the balanced parental relationship between a father and a mother, and that's the ideal.
Senator, this bill has been described, or this amendment has really been described by many as the anti-gay amendment. Do you think this is an unfair description?
Well, I think that's a harsh description. We don't wish to have any negative connotation given to it. I believe it's a fairly written bill. It's simply the question before the public is, shall Minnesota's Constitution be amended to recognize marriage as solely between one man and one woman? Yes or no? And it's an opportunity for the public now to get engaged, have their year-long discussion. We kind of described it as, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this, and let the public give the legislature a direction on how we should decide this. And I think now's the time to do that.
You spoke a little bit earlier about the fact that same-sex marriage is currently illegal in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And you've also spoken about the intentions of this constitutional amendment. Did you think when you attached your name to it that it would be such a divisive issue as well?
Well, yeah, it's divisive wherever it goes. 31 states have considered it on their ballots. 31 states have passed it. I think it is important to have the public discussion. It's important to have the public involved. There's very few issues I would not give to the public in consideration, but due to time and the consideration of cost, we limit it to just very important issues that come up from time to time. But yeah, we knew it was probably going to be controversial. It raises a lot of emotional ire on both sides, and yet we shouldn't be afraid of controversy. We should be able to discuss this in a civil manner, have our public discussion, and then let the public give us direction.
You brought up the word controversy. There's been some controversy and, of course, the subsequent ruling by the state Supreme Court affirming that the legislature will provide titles for constitutional amendments. And the question's been asked about passing new legislation that might require a supermajority in the future to help pass any constitutional amendment legislation. I asked you about this at a news conference, and you contend that really the majority vote that matters is that of the voters in November. But aside from that, how do you feel about requiring a supermajority to move any constitutional amendment language out of the legislature?
Out of the legislature, I think it's fine the way it is right now. And the reason I say that is it gives the legislature a little wider berth to pass something, to give it to the public. We shouldn't be restricting the public on any question, and I think a supermajority requirement would. And as I mentioned to you earlier, once it gets to the ballot, it's not just a yes and no count on that particular question. They consider the whole universe total of people voting in the election, and you have to meet the 50% or the simple majority of the entire universe of people. So if you had 20% of the public, let's say they turned out for the presidential election, but 20% said, I don't want to vote at all for any referendum question, the proponents still have to meet the 50% plus one requirement of the entire population that happened to turn out to the polls. That is a high bar, and this is going to be as equally a high bar to pass this.
As voters head to the polls, do you think they should do some research on this, or is it pretty straightforward? And
I think they should. I think they should talk about it. I think they need to talk about it in their own communities. I think they need to talk about it in their faith communities as well. Get references from it. Give it plenty of thought. The one last position that I know would be definitely affected may be curriculums in public schools, reflecting now the newly recognized relationship and marriage of homosexual couples. We have health classes, we have sex education programs that are definitely referenced as heterosexual focus in those areas of education. Those could be challenged, and it could be forced education of a homosexual brand of health class being taught to our children as well.
Okay. Senator Limmer, thank you for your time and for your patience as you, and I'm sure our viewers can hear the light rail construction right outside of the window. Again, we appreciate it.
Progress waits for no man.